a bunch of Supreme Court rulings have come through recently, and there's one of them that Donald Trump is very in favor of. Now, there are a handful of these rulings that are very, very good, and I want to talk about at least one of them. One of those rulings is the idea that up to 5 days, or basically, you can have votes still being tallied after whatever arbitrary election day we have, because the goal is to count all of the votes that have been submitted, not cut off certain votes. The argument that the Trump administration tried to put forward was that mail-in ballots that are received 5 days after an election should not be counted. And the Supreme Court ruled that no, if you postmarked your vote within the proper time frame for your vote to be counted, then legally your vote is counted. Fuck the fuck off. And there are people who are already really, really angry about that. Here, we have Scott Pressler going, SCOTUS ruled 5-4 that Mississippi mail-in ballots can be received 5 days after Election Day, so long as they're postmarked by Election Day. You're watching the 2026 election being stolen in real time, while our Senate does absolutely nothing. You should be furious. Scott, dumbass in chief, my guy, can we just talk about this for a second? Your post, in no uncertain terms, just said that we are losing democracy by counting every vote. Just think about that for a minute. Actually, no, don't. I'm sorry. I don't want you to hurt your brain, and I know you're not very good at the thunking part, so we're just going to go ahead and move on to what Trump is talking about. But before we do that, we do have to talk about fan art, and this one is from Small Spoon Art. They said, I know Jet already posted a plug suit Suris, but I also love that as a concept as well. Sorry it's not as polished. I did this with what I had at work. Polish or no, it also looks fantastic. So now we've got the plug suit done by Jet and the plug suit done by Small Spoon Art, and they both look great, honestly. Also, Wolf66, thank you for the follow. I'm surprised I didn't catch that when it happened. Sorry. That said, if you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, drop it in the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and pop over to here. Trump asked the Supreme Court to overrule 90-year precedent on shadow docket. Now, what is this about? Well, let's go ahead and read real quick. This is what the Supreme Court just ruled in favor of Trump on. President Trump launched a direct attack on a nearly century-old ruling on Thursday, asking the Supreme Court to let him fire the Federal Trade Commissioner despite long-standing precedent. Trump argued that allowing a Democratic FTC commissioner to remain in her seat, Rebecca Slaughter, interfered with his executive authority. Article 2 precludes a court from ordering the reinstatement of an executive officer removed by the president, U.S. Solicitor General John Soar wrote in an emergency appeal. The president's removal power is conclusive and preclusive, which means that it may not be regulated by Congress or reviewed by the courts. Guys, do you know what I love? I love having checks and balances. You know what's really cool? Removing checks and balances. You see, when I was a wee little kid, learning about how our government worked, I learned that we are supposed to have checks and balances in the courts and in the Congress for the president. And the president is supposed to be able to check those areas as well, but by trying to erode every way we possibly can engage in checks and balances, we are just handing more and more power to the executive branch, which has always been the plan for the Conservative Party. If granted, the appeal would be the nail in the coffin of Humphrey Executor versus United States, a landmark 1935 Supreme Court ruling limiting presidential authority over independent regulatory commissions. The conservative supermajority has severely curtailed the 90-year precedent in recent months, ceding to Trump's repeated request to dismiss ideological foes. This latest emergency appeal, the 23rd of Trump's second term, could effectively overturn the ruling without the High Court's thorough review. For-cause removal protections shield independent board members from political interference. Members are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, but Humphrey's executor determined that they can only be fired for misconduct, not because their decisions aren't favorable to the current administration. So, this is entirely Trump trying to say, I want to be able to put anybody who's loyal to me in power and take anybody who's not loyal to me out of power. He does not give a shit about any of the rules for that. He wants to make sure that if you say something he doesn't like, he can fire you on the spot, even if you did not engage in any misconduct whatsoever. He wants full power over that. He wants to run the country as if he was a CEO of America. A panel on DC's circuit refused to remove the commissioner, relying on Humphreys. Trump characterized the move as subverting the hierarchy of the federal court system by the Constitution and Congress, citing the court's recent shadow docket rulings. The lower courts have made clear, regardless of recent developments on this country's emergency docket, that they will adhere to their expansive and incorrect interpretation of Humphrey's executor, Sawara wrote. And they have explained that they will persist in that adherence unless and until this court grains criteriori and overrules that decision. Now, let's see where we are right now in Donald Trump trying to figure out if the courts will allow him to fire whoever he wants just because they said that they didn't like how big his gut was that day. Donald Trump, today's historic slaughter decision by the Supreme Court is the greatest increase in presidential power in the last 100 years. Such a monumental ruling at such an important time. President Donald J. Trump. To show the importance of the slaughter case, 90 years of precedent have been completely and unequivocally overruled, greatly increasing presidential power in a time when it is most needed. So, just gonna let you know right now, the problem with this is that power is never being given back. There will not be a president in the future that is going to strip themselves of power outside of when they absolutely have to at the end of their term, and even Trump failed at that pretty horribly. This is the kind of thing that terrifies me to no end. This is the kind of thing that freaks me the fuck out. Because I grew up watching Star Wars, and while I grew up watching the original trilogy more than anything, in my adult years, I have grown a fondness and an appreciation for the Star Wars movies of the prequel trilogy. And the prequel trilogy has a moment in it where executive powers are increased and handed over in emergency fashion to fucking Senator Palpatine. In so doing, he gains the power to reformat the entirety of the Republic into an empire. Zodiac says any Iranian who fires at us will be blown to hell. Okay, sure. Is your plan to just kind of come in here and say random shit? Or do you have a point? Just saying. Anywho, my problem is that I do not want to see America have the exact same fucking shit happen to it that quite literally happened in those movies. And I'm not saying that because, my argument is it happened in a movie, therefore it'll happen here. No, my argument is very concisely, we are supposed to have checks and balances. We are supposed to have power evenly distributed between the courts, the Congress, and the president. And increasingly, that power has eroded from the courts and from Congress. And it has been being given bit by bit to the president. And many times it's being given to the president by the courts and Congress. That's the part that fucks me up the most. Rhymejack says, I think a lot about how we spent $200 billion on that. Ending world hunger was about $4 billion a year for 7 years in 2023. The Emperor drop-kicked a Jawa for no reason and laughed about it for 10 minutes straight on live TV. Kylo Ren. Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus. Oh, there's a political cartoon that shows this shit. Nixon, I am not a crook. Trump, I'm a crook. So what? Political cartoons are great sometimes. They are. Tazora says, how long we thinking it's going to be before Trump and one of his successors just walks up to the podium and goes, we're an empire now? I don't think they're ever going to be that blatant, because if they are ever that blatant, then it gives them something to lose. Nixon would be flabbergasted at this. Again, Nixon is rolling in his fucking grave. Jesus. So, there are a couple of takes on this, and I'm going to read this one here. This is from New York Times. It's a snippet from it. This should be very alarming to all Americans, irrespective of politics. The Supreme Court is creating its own monarchy. It has conferred on the president the right to fire at will leaders of all regulatory agencies. The president will now be able to fire at will leaders from the Securities and Exchange Commission, Consumer Product Safety Commission, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, National Labor Board, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the Postal Service. That means our financial protections and food purity protections are all at the mercy of whoever happens to be occupying the White House at the time. This was 90 years of independence ended with the stroke of 6 pens. Remember, this is the same Supreme Court that made it so that if the president did anything illegal, as long as he considered it a official act, it wasn't. And the example given directly about that was, would it be illegal then, or would it be legal then for the president to assassinate a political opponent? And the conservative majority said, yeah, no, that would be perfectly legal and reasonable. No. Hey, Suris, I hope you're having a better week than me. Tutorial rule was being handed piece by piece to an orange guy in the office, so I don't know, but hopefully your day's going somewhat okay. That said, I am actively hitting the point where I am getting massive hunger pangs. So I'm going to have to cut the stream a little shorter than I originally intended. I started today with a yogurt parfait as my breakfast, and I am rapidly learning that that was not enough to keep me from having a migraine. Cozy Brews, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. That said, this is spooky, and hopefully we find a way away from this bullshit eventually. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitt, you know I'm not saying that last part, Sylvie Snow, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.